Hi, my name is Jamie, and I'm a senior in high school. I've always prided myself on getting good grades, as I have dreams of going to medical school and becoming a doctor. I've spent a lot of time studying and barely went out other than to my part-time job. Aside from missing out on some parties, I felt that things were going well for me. That is, until my last semester. I needed to take the next level of biology if I wanted to be able to apply for medical school, and the higher my grade, the better my chances of being accepted became. It was kind of scary, but I've always done well when it came to math and the sciences. Some people struggled with those subjects, but I was lucky enough that I've always found them easy. My biology teacher was Mr. Carlton, and he had been teaching at the school for decades and had a history of being a very challenging teacher. But I knew that if I focused hard and studied even harder, that I would do okay. At least that's what I originally thought. The first week of class was pretty standard, really. Mr. Carlton introduced himself and spent a lot of time seeing where we had left off in the previous semester. At the end of the first week, though, he threw the whole class quite the curveball.
Okay, class, now that we've gotten the basics out of the way, I have a bit of a surprise for you. At the end of the second week, we will have a test on the first 2 chapters of the textbook. I need to see who can and who can't keep up with my style of teaching. If you aren't willing to put the time and effort into studying hard, then you won't do well in my class. The entire class groaned and couldn't believe what we were hearing. I knew that he was a hard teacher, but to have a test on that much material, and at the end of the second week of the semester on top of that, it was a bit much. As everyone was leaving the class, I overheard a few of my fellow students talking. Oh man, how are we supposed to pass this class if he is going to have tests like that?
I know, right? This is insane. Someone should tell him off.
Oh, stop whining, guys. I'm sure that it won't be that hard.
And how do you know that? Have you seen how thick this textbook is?
I was kind of surprised, really. After all, they all had a right to be upset about the level of difficulty of the class, but for Joe to be so unfazed was a bit odd. Joe was a jock, and he barely ever got anything other than a C. When it came to school, he wasn't exactly a good student, but here he was, confident and sure that he would do well. I didn't know what to make of it. The week passed by quickly, and then it was Friday and time for the big test. The whole class grew quiet as the very long test was handed out. As I looked around, everyone looked nervous. Everyone but Joe, that is. He appeared as confident as anyone could be. Ignoring him, I got to work on the test, and it was very hard indeed. I studied nonstop all week, and I wasn't sure how well I had done. On Monday, when he handed the test back, everyone in the class failed except Joe. Somehow, he managed to get nearly perfect. I didn't know how this could have happened, but I knew that it was only the beginning of the year, and there would no doubt be a lot more tests, so one bad mark shouldn't affect my overall grade too much. After he handed the test back, though, Mr. Carlton announced that in 2 weeks we would have another test on the next 2 chapters. Although I didn't do well on the first one, I made a promise to myself that I would get nearly perfect on the next one. After class ended, I went to talk to Mr. Carlton to see if he would give me advice on what to study in particular. Hey, Mr. Carlton, could you help me out and give me some advice on what parts of the chapters to focus most of my studying on? Well, no, not really. Besides, there are other ways to get good grades if you know the trick. He winked at me and then tapped the side of his nose as if that was some kind of secret code that everyone knew. But I just thought that he was being eccentric. The weeks passed, and then it was time for the next test. Somehow the second test was even longer than the first, and on the following Monday, when they were handed back to us, the entire class failed again. All except Joe and Martin, who were high-fiving each other. I couldn't understand it. Neither of them were very good students, and yet they were getting nearly perfect marks, while the rest of the class was failing.
See, what did I tell you? There's more than one way to win.
You were so right, man. I had to get to the bottom of this, and so I approached them after class to ask them what was going on. Hey guys, I was just wondering how you were doing so well in biology. I mean, don't get me wrong, but neither of you is really into the sciences the way that I am. So how are you doing it? Did you guys get a good tutor? The 2 guys chuckled, but shook their heads, while Rachel grew quiet and withdrawn.
Wait, you are so right about that. I can't be bothered to study for this dumb class, but we have something better.
Withdrawn. Wait, are you somehow getting the answers to the test? Nope, that would be just as bad as actually studying. Nah, we pay Mr. Carlton $100 to pass us for each test. It's a bit steep, but it's the easiest grade I've ever gotten. I was stunned to say the least. I had no idea that that was what Mr. Carlton was hinting at the other day. He was supposed to be a teacher, and here he was just taking bribes and giving out fake grades and failing the rest of the class. Are you paying him too, Rachel?
No. He wouldn't take my money. He wanted me to do things with him instead. Like, he expected me to sleep with him in order to get good grades.
That was disgusting. Not only was it inappropriate for him to be trying to sleep with a student, but Rachel was underage as well. I walked away as Joe and Martin celebrated their ill-gotten victory. I wasn't sure if I should do anything, although there was no way that Mr. Carlton should get away with doing what he was doing. Plus, even though I really wanted to do well in his class, there was no way I could afford to spend $100 per test to get a passing grade. That was when I hatched a plan, and I went to speak to Rachel about it. After a few minutes, she came around and agreed to be a part of my plan. The next day, I went to the bank before going to school and took out $100. Excuse me, Mr. Carlton, I was told that if I wanted to get a passing grade on the next test, that I could give you this and that. I didn't have to worry about studying. I handed him the money, and he just nodded and smiled broadly. I knew you were a smart boy. With this generous gift, I don't see any reason why you won't get nearly perfect on the next test. For an extra $50, I can make it a perfect score though, if you like. Maybe on the next test. That was all the money I had won me. Okay, suit yourself then. You have? That was it. I had him dead to rights. I knew that with that videotape that Rachel took, that I would be able to get Mr. Carlton fired, but that wasn't enough. For him to take bribes for test scores was bad enough. But what he had tried to do to Rachel was unquestionably evil. And there was no way to tell just how many years that he had done this sort of thing as well. There could be dozens of women that he hurt over the decades while he was a teacher. And so, I went and hid and began to film while Rachel approached Mr. Carlton this time.
Excuse me, sir, but I've reconsidered your offer.
Oh, goody.
Yes, just to be clear, if I sleep with you, then you'll give me a pass on the next test?
Yes, and if you keep sleeping with me, then you'll keep getting good grades. Now take off your clothes and let's get started. He was such a pig. As per the plan, though, Rachel began to unbutton her shirt, and just before she took it off, though, she screamed out.
No, I won't do it. I won't let you take advantage of me, you disgusting pig.
And then she suddenly kicked him in the groin and then ran out of the classroom. While Mr. Carlton was toppled over in pain, I snuck out of the classroom and headed straight to the principal's office. Rachel and I showed him the videos that we took, and he asked for copies of them and then sent us on our way. Neither of us knew if anything would happen until the police showed up at the school and dragged Mr. Carlton away. It was quite the spectacle, and he fought back against the police, trying to resist arrest, but they overpowered him. Both Rachel and I knew that it had to do with the videos that we made. Later, when he went to trial, many women came forward and told horrible stories about how Mr. Carlton had abused them over the years in order for them to get good grades. By the time the case was nearing its closing, he was looking at spending the rest of his life in prison. I felt so bad for all the women that testified, and I knew that, like Rachel, they were incredibly brave for coming forward and telling their stories. As for the class, the school hired a substitute teacher to replace Mr. Carlton, and seeing as how he had been doing shady things. They voided all the marks up to that point, and the new teacher gave out makeup tests to replace the ones that the class had already failed. Pretty much everyone in the class aced them, except Martin and Joe, who failed. It was a bit of karma, really. After all, they had cheated and played Mr. Carlton's devious game, and now that it wasn't available, they were forced to try on their own, and they couldn't make the cut. Rachel actually got a mark even higher than my own, and after what happened, the two of us became close, and I'm happy to say that we are now best friends, although sometimes I wonder if we are becoming even more than that. Personally, I'm just happy that my life is back on track for me to become a doctor. Thanks for watching.